Welcome to Simply Caroline, a podcast dedicated to women empowerment where we will discuss a bunch of different subjects such as life, parenting, love, business, money, relationships, healing, recovery, addiction, entrepreneurship, and so much more. A podcast I'll do my best to keep simple, fun, and relatable and bring you tools to help you better your life. So thank you for being here. And here's your host, myself, Caroline Blanchard. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Thank you for being with us again this week. This week, I have such an interesting person, Emmi Fortin. How are you?
Hi, I'm really well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, so Emmi is an author of an amazing book that we're going to talk about, Who is Your Red Dress? But she is also a breakup coach, someone I would have needed a few times in my life. So
I
Emmi,
hear that a lot.
yeah, I was just joking pre-interview saying you must be busy these days. So let's start with this. What brought you to being a breakup coach?
Yeah, this is my origin story, essentially. It all has to do with my own experience in the past in a relationship that was really challenging for me. So it was an on and off relationship, also what I call a situationship, which is like a very uncertain kind of relationship where you don't really know what's going on. It's confusing. And so there were a lot of breakups throughout that relationship, with the same person. And it was so challenging for me that I knew at that time I also wanted to help people who were in similar situations. I just didn't know how I was going to do it at that time. And so now, fast forward, I help people process their breakups and create an action plan to move forward.
And it makes so much sense because it's quite a trauma. Breakups, no matter, you can't put a length of time that is more critical than others. It all depends on how the person processes it. And whether you break up with the same person a few times or different people, it's always like that trauma that you're hitting again. So good for you for following your passion. But let's go back to your book, because then it's going to give us a good answer about, some things that you just said. And I love that word. It was the first time I was reading it, situationship. And I just adopted because it's so good. So let's talk a bit about your book. Who is
Sure.
Your Red Dress?
Yes. So a lot of people, when they hear the title, they're like, wait, who is your red dress? And I'm like, yes, exactly. So essentially, I am a salsa dancer, bachata, salsa, like lots of different dancing, but the Latin dances just call my name. They speak to me. And my ex-partner was a Latin dancer as well. So we used to go dancing a lot, and there was a lot of passion, and, we were just always immersed in that scene. And for me, and I think for a lot of media, the red dress is kind of that quintessential dress depicted in salsa scenes, right?
Mhm.
And for me, the red dress elicits all these kind of feelings, like it's tantalizing, it's seductive, it's attractive, it's even a little dangerous, right? And so one morning when I was, sleeping next to my ex, I just kind of woke up and I looked at him and I was like, he is exactly like a red dress. And in that moment, I just had all these thoughts just like coming into my brain left and right. I got up out of bed, took my phone, and I started frantically writing down the story that I called Red Dress. And the dress was, a metaphor for this man and all of the feelings that I had going on in that relationship at the time. And this little story, Red Dress, became the cornerstone of my whole memoir. And the second half of the title is One Woman's Quest to Break Up with a Love Addiction.
You're right. I forgot the second half.
Yeah.
And
So
you focus a lot on the second half too in the book.
yeah, and that dress is really it's the symbol of something that can be so attractive and can make you feel so good when you're wearing it. But then at the same time, like I'm sure every gal here who's ever worn like a sexy tight dress knows the feeling of how you're like, oh, I look good. But then as soon as you're out, you're like, this thing is so uncomfortable. And you like can't wait to get home and take it off. Right. But then, you later on and maybe a couple weeks away, you're like, ooh, I remember how good I looked in that dress. I think I'm going to wear it again to this next event, right? And then you just keep going back to it, even though it is so darn uncomfortable. So that was this cycle that I was stuck in with this man. It was just such a compelling concoction of emotions for me that it kept me going back and back and back, even though we kept on breaking up over and over again.
How long did that last for?
So that was on and off for 6 years.
That's long.
Yes, way too long.
Yes. And you talk about that in your book, like the feelings that you were going through, and I did identify to so many of them. And I think first of all, it's very well written, and it's easy to grasp what you're saying. Even the salsa, I'm not a salsa dancer, and I was just like, sounds cool. But anyway, point is, it's very well depicted in how you so 6 years, that's a long time.
Yeah, it was too long. And I knew it while I was in it. I mean, I knew it was something I was constantly trying to walk away from, but always kept getting sucked right back in. And the reason I even referred to myself mostly in my head, kind of joking around, but pretty serious. I was like, I'm an addict. I am an addict for this person. I'm an addict for this relationship. And, I called myself a salsa addict too, because I was using this world of salsa dancing. It's something that, is a passion of mine. I was also using it as like a form of escape from the reality of my life and the reality of the relationship. And at the same time, I was also an addict with this man because I would keep going back for those highs anytime I could get them, even when I knew I was going to feel devastated and crumbled and empty the very next day. Like I was willing to pay that price just for that one night of highs, dancing together or, the passion after. And that cycle was just really hard to break.
So some would call that self-destruction pattern. And I've been there before too, when you shouldn't be doing something, how bad you're going to pay the price, and you still do it. And I think this is a bit why they call it an addiction. It's when it becomes stronger than you. It feels like you don't control it anymore. It controls you, whatever the it is, and it's like, I've never lived a love addiction, but it's just like any other addiction. I assume you need to really step back and find out like what's pushing you to do that.
Exactly. And 1,000%. It's definitely you're compelled. It's like this force greater than you. It's like, and I always used to kind of refer to us as like magnets, and I can only speak from my experience, but I would imagine that he probably felt similarly in some instances as well. It was like, each of us had kind of taken turns ending it, but then we'd always end up back together. And so it's this compulsion. If we were in the same room, we would eventually be drawn together and probably get back together, or probably go home and hook up or whatever. And so yeah, it took a lot of first identifying all of the deficiencies or voids in myself so that I could then start making new choices of what was actually going to support me versus keeping me stuck in this cycle that was really deteriorating my own self-worth and choices I was making in other areas of my life too.
Yeah, and I want to come back to this in 1 second, but I assume you had friends around you telling you, what are you doing? Just leave. Like, oh my gosh, you're going back again. Oh my goodness, a lot of us know that person and we're like, I don't get it. It's just so simple. Just stop.
Yes.
What do you say to those people?
Yes. Thank you for saying that. And that resonates with me a lot because I would say that to myself too. It's like so much self-judgment. But I think too, that is where like isolation starts to come in, and then also like self-isolation, and then also, hiding the full truth from other people.
Mm.
Because I was very open talking to some friends about it, but those were usually like my other hot mess friends, but like I did have a group of friends who I always was like, they got their lives like pretty put together. They've all got great heads on their shoulders. They're in these long-term relationships. I love them. I respect them so much. And over time, I kind of stopped sharing like when we would get back together. Or, it was kind of like I would never lie about it, but I definitely wouldn't bring it up. Or if they asked about it, I would just kind of like skirt around, the reality. Because I was ashamed. I was like, I can't tell them that I'm back with this man again after everything I just told them from the last breakup. And
Mm.
so that is part of the cycle too. And, I think addiction in general is you start feeling shameful because you're doing something that's not good for you, but you keep doing it anyway. And then that makes you feel even worse about yourself because you're just making choices that are bad for you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it's funny because you're talking about a relationship, and me, I'm thinking alcohol when you say that. Like when you start drinking more, you say you don't share with people, or you start being more secretive, you start isolate a bit more, but it's the same for all addiction. And that's why, it really needs to be looked at very seriously. And especially, I guess when it's emotional, it's even harder to pinpoint, because when it's a substance, you can say like, if I stop this substance, I'll be okay. But here it was a relationship with this one person, but it also probably affected yourself as a person in a relationship. So even if you were with another person, at some point you must be like deregulated, I can say so, you know?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I mean, so in addition to having this on-off relationship, and I do go into, there's a bunch of chapters in the book that are, kind of entertaining, but also it was like a really hard time for me. But all the dating. So as I would imagine, an addict of a substance or other kind of addiction, you are essentially void filling, or
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to escape something. And so every time I went through a breakup, I felt so empty, and I wanted so badly to like have a person who cared about me. And it was like I wanted like a traditional relationship, that I would go on these like dating frenzies. I mean, it was like a mad frenzy to like find my person. But what did that result in? It resulted in so much wasted time for me and for the poor men that I was going out on dates with, because every one of them pretty much would get maybe one, maybe two dates. And I'd be like, nope, I don't feel the connection. Or, oh no, this one's like too nice, actually. I'm feeling like a little bored. Maybe I had dates with a lot of nice men. And guess what I did?
Done
I
them
said
all.
no to all of them. Why? Because I was still dependent, obsessed, and fixated on this other person, and the hope that someday our relationship would be what I wanted it to be.
And do you think also that, when you're like that in a relationship, it's also because you're expecting the other person to fill a void that is unfillable by someone else, basically. And I know that, if I'm thinking substance abuse, that's what we go get into using substances. It's like, oh, I'm going to fill this void. So when you ask that to another human being to fill a void in your life that is like deep rooted, it's almost impossible. And that's something that you need to work on long term, because you're not going to find that person who's actually going to be able to fill the void, maybe temporarily, but
Yeah. Yeah. And chances are you're actually going to attract other people into your life that are probably the opposite of what you want. For me, I was attracting men who were not interested in commitment at all. But I thought I really was ready to meet my person. I was not. Like looking back now, it's very easy to see there was a lot I had to do, personal growth wise, learning wise, clarity wise, before I could eventually meet my ideal partner. And honestly, after I did all of the work, I did hop on back on the apps, I actually met my partner pretty immediately, whereas I had been online dating for 6 years prior. But the huge difference is I was a hot mess the previous times, and I was way more grounded and clear and balanced the last time.
I think you said one big key point here too. You were clear. When you're clear about what you're looking for, it's easier to find. When you're looking for something that you're not too sure of, it's kind of hard to find the right person because you don't even know what you're looking for. But let's get to the part of your book where, something happened and it was enough. And you decided, I need to work on Emmi, and I need to stop being this hot mess.
Yeah, yeah. There definitely was a defining moment for me where I really had a change in my decision to help myself. And before, it was like I knew what I should be doing,
Mm.
but it was a difference between deciding like, okay, now I'm really actually going to take action. And so my first thought was, clearly when I'm in the same room as this man, we're like magnets, I can't stay away. I'm going to physically distance myself. And so I was like, I'm going to leave the country. So there is a chapter in my book called Flying Solo in Spain, and I decided to take a solo trip to another country to physically distance myself from this man for 3 weeks. And I was like, I need to just like stop the cycle, like stop it in its tracks. So in addition to the kind of logical thinking of physical distance, I also had set some personal goals for myself. I knew I wanted this trip to foster a deep sense of independence in myself. I knew I wanted to challenge myself and feel competent. And I knew I wanted to push myself outside of my comfort zone to do something that I thought I would never be able to do. I mean, you have to understand, I am probably one of the most like geographically and directionally challenged people you will ever meet. And so going to a country by myself, I didn't even have Wi-Fi, so I was using paper maps to try to figure out how to get places. I mean, this was a huge challenge, a huge undertaking for me. And when I got there, I allowed myself a humongous space for exploration literally of new places, exploration of meeting new people. I was also a goal of mine to learn Spanish, and I took some immersive Spanish classes. My goal was to be conversational by the time I left after 3 weeks, which I accomplished. And it was such an impactful experience for me because I went with specific intentions. So I wasn't like transformed or perfect when I came back. I even had what I used to call relapses. However, it was a defining moment where I started making choices to actively continue doing things that would help me move forward.
And now that it's one of the things that you actually apply with your clients every day. It's like how to apply that to yourself. So give us like a few tips, your top tips on, what are the first things to do when you're, I want to say stuck, and it's not stuck because you have the power to get out of it, but when you're like just immersed in this hot, passionate relationship and you're like, I need to get out of it. And from the externally, some people will look at some relationship and be like, it's so clear she shouldn't be with him. Like, or it's so clear. I don't know why she's going back to him, but for that person, it may be her place where she's stuck. So what are your top tips?
Yeah, I think similarly to maybe other, types of addiction, it really comes down to making a choice in the present moment. So what I see with my clients too, and I think this is important for if anybody is in like a relationship that they don't want to be in or is toxic, um, sometimes the idea of letting go of someone for good is just so final that it actually makes it really hard for you to take any action at all on leaving. And so rather than thinking about the fact like, this is it, I'm ending it, I'm never going to talk to him or her again, I'm never going to see him or her again, never going to get back together with him or her again, that can feel way too final and cause you to not actually take any action. So instead, practice the moment by moment approach. I am not going to text him or her today, or even this hour, right? Like whatever you need to do to start your detachment process is really key. And while you're doing that detachment process, also focusing on reconnecting with yourself. So much of our energy is focused on what that other person is doing. Are they going to text me? Am I going to see them again? Will they ghost me? All that energy you're putting out of your body when you could be redirecting it toward yourself, asking yourself questions like, okay, what do I need to learn about myself from this person or situation? What can I be doing tomorrow that's going to help grow me and make me feel, like myself, quote unquote, whatever that is now. So those are some of the starting steps. I mean, I could go on forever, so I'll just pause there.
Yes, no, and it's very helpful. And I think that's one of the part that I would add that for me took years is to learn to fall in love with yourself. Sometimes when you've been so passionate about anything else external to yourself, you forget who you really are, and you forget to appreciate and just nurture yourself, basically self-care.
Yeah.
So
I did a lot of self-care practices. Like I started, moving, yoga, Zumba, whatever. But that was something that I started doing. I started taking care of my physical body consistently. What was I eating? Right? Was I doing movement every day? Because that's something that you can really control. Sometimes you can't control how you feel when you wake up in the morning, right? But you can control whether you work out or not. You can control what you're going to eat. And with those uncertain relationships, that is giving you such a sense of not having control that it's nice to introduce something that you can provide structure to yourself with, on your quote unquote recovery path.
Yeah, it is a recovery path. The
Yeah.
more I'm speaking with you, the more I'm like, this is the exact same thing, and there should be a rehab for that. You go to rehab and you stay away. You did your own in Spain. Kind of joking here, but it's not a light subject at all.
Yeah.
But it is, because it can be very difficult. And you're saying take it moment by moment. For us, like, it's take it one day at a time. Because when you said that, it just really resonated with me. When you stop something, and I'm like that, like if today I decide I'm not eating chocolate anymore, I'm probably gonna end a podcast and go buy chocolate. And just to make sure,
Exactly.
like, when something is final for me, it becomes it creates anxiety. So, and it took me years to understand that about myself, to stop making things final and just to say no, just for now. For
Yeah.
now, I'm choosing not to whatever. And
Yes.
then tomorrow, if I feel like it, I'll reconsider tomorrow. you know like,
Yes.
to not make things final, because it is, and I think it's just human. It's, we don't want to lack anything, so we don't want to have the final thing of something. So what's next for you, Emmi?
So much. So I was a high school teacher for 16 years. I left teaching. I was taught biology. I left teaching at the end of 2021. And honestly, since then, I feel like I've just been on this huge adventure of exploring and getting to grow in this whole new purpose, like a new way of helping people. And so the book has been a humongous part of that for me. What's next for me? I love sharing stories and I enjoy hearing them from other people just as much. I think story sharing and hearing other people's experiences is one of the most impactful ways that we can learn more about ourselves and also get some perspective, right? What's someone else been through that I can learn from them rather than having to go through it myself? Or it can help to guide you to make new decisions. And so I think what's next for me is a lot more story sharing, in community, and also just being really curious about how I'm going to be helping people with their breakups and relationships and getting them to where they want to be. Because I can safely say that it really seems like the dating world is a complete mess right now, and I'm on a mission to like fix it one person at a time.
Well, thank you. Thank you, because that's going to be quite something. But you know what? We need to start somewhere.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's one question that I forgot to ask you, because now you are in a relationship and you're actually in a happy relationship.
Yeah.
So there is happiness after.
Oh, absolutely. There was a defining moment for me for that too. Something that I learned from the last relationship was that I hadn't been honest with myself around what was okay. I was just accepting, what was given to me. But if I was being honest with myself, it wasn't okay, wasn't what I wanted. And so I made a promise that moving forward, I was going to be 100% truthful with myself and also speaking with others. Like, I'm not even going to tell you a little white lie. Like, I'm going to just be honest all the time. And that has made all of the difference.
Yeah, and I can see what you're saying here. It's also, I think that when you have a lack of self-love or self-esteem, you will accept all the crumbs because
Yes.
you just don't want to stand up to I deserve the whole bread. So you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, you want to treat me like this. Okay, it's fine. For this time I'll let it slide. But um I think these are also red flags when if you're listening today and you're like, I do that a lot, like letting my values slide or letting my principles slide. And you shouldn't, because some people will call us demanding, but it's not demanding. That's just, knowing what you want and also knowing your worth. And when you know your worth, you know that you can expect better or whatever, at least the criteria is that you've put yourself. So I love that you said that. It's very crucial.
Yeah. And when you are able to express your truth, you don't have to be demanding about it. It can be done in a really peaceful way. It's really more of like, what's your energy that you're giving off? Like, can someone sense that you're not, you're solid in who you are, you're solid in your values and what you want. And you just show up and you're like, yeah, this is what I value. And then if that doesn't match them, then you're like, all right, that's okay. It's
Yeah,
not gonna work.
learning to let go too.
Yeah,
you know I
having
think
it.
that sometimes we think that there's this one person that will change and become what we want, instead of just accepting that you need to let go. It's going to be someone else.
Yes. And not having an attachment to that expected outcome that you want is really important.
Yes, very difficult as well.
Mhm.
Cool.
So, yeah.
So is storytelling, and I'm sure there's another book coming. I can sense it. It's going to be probably your experience into coaching, and I will read the next one. There's so much that could be shared on that subject.
Well,
Uh,
I actually do have a journal. It should be coming out next week, actually, on, well, I don't know when this is going to be posted, but on Amazon. It's a
Okay.
breakup and divorce self-renewal journal. So it's all prompts and questions and affirmations to help you gain clarity, confidence, and peace, as you move forward.
So tell us the title again.
The Breakup and Divorce Self-Renewal Journal.
There you go. So go get yourself one. And I'm sure that just with the prompts, it must be, very therapeutic. Whether you're going right now through a breakup or you went through it, sometimes there's wounds that still need to be healed.
Absolutely.
Yes. But do you have like only people who just broke up coming to see you, or there's some people that are like, coming after like 2 years and they're like, I've been miserable for the last 2 years?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely people who are like, I can't believe this happened, 1, 2, 3 years ago. For some people, it's even more than that. And they're like, I can't believe I still am holding on to this, or I still haven't let go. So yeah, I have people in kind of all stages of their relationship status. And it's really all about moving forward. Like, how can we get you to where you want to be?
Awesome. So, Emmi, if people want to reach you, where can they do that?
Yeah, they can go to my website. It's www.emmifortin.com. And I actually have a free mini guide there if you want to learn the 3 things you can do now to get over your breakup. That is there for you. And you can always follow me on social media at Emmi Fortin, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or send me an
Yeah.
email.
And get her book. She has it in the background as well, but get her book, The Red
Yes.
Dress, One Woman's Quest to Break Up with a Love Addiction. It's very well written, super interesting, and you may even start liking salsa.
Yeah. Thank you.
But Emmi, thank you so much for being with us this week. It was super interesting, and I encourage everyone to follow Emmi and to get her book. And to everyone who was here this week, thank you so much. I'll see you next week. Thanks, Emmi.
Hi, thank you.